So I just want to start saying that I'm Shinko Roshi, transmitting from my hermit. So this is the place where I have been doing retreat. So my talk today is on the middle way, interdependence and the middle way. And I want to start with a quote by Ukiyama Roshi that goes like this. To look more deeply into the Buddhist notion of life, we have to take up the teachings of interdependence and the middle way. The view that all things exist is one extreme. The view that nothing exists is the other extreme. The view that nothing exists is the other extreme. This means that our very own life cannot be grasped as an existing lump, not as non-existence. I have to tell that I have learned a lot from putting this talk together, and I feel very lucky that I was assigned to put this talk together because actually I learned a lot, and I hope that I can transmit some of those things that I have learned to you. Um, it's really have transformed my life, some of this information. So I hope that I can transmit that to you. It is said that the Buddha began his first teaching by telling his listeners to take the middle way, the middle path between extreme asceticism on one hand and sensual indulgence on the other hand. The Buddha said that in between any two opposites lies emptiness, or sunyata, which is not nothingness, but a vast creative potential. The middle way is fluid and full of possibilities for our lives, and especially for our lives at this time. At this time that we are facing many crossroads, political upheavals, famine, animal extinctions, climate changes, and on and on. So this is very important information for walking life at this time, or at least I felt it like that for my own life. The middle way is also called the great way, or the highest way, or the supreme way. Trusting the Heart Mind is the name of the poem composed by our third Indian ancestor, Chinese ancestor, Master Sosan. For those of you who would like to walk the middle way or the highest way or the supreme way, I really encourage you to recite that poem and take it to heart. Right now, I'm only gonna recite part of it, but I know you recite it like every other day, and that's very important, especially during retreat. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. When preferences are cast aside, the way stands clear and undisguised. But even slight distinctions make the earth and heaven far apart. If you would clearly see the truth, discard opinions, pro and con. To founder in dislike and like is nothing but the mind's disease. And not to see the way's deep truth disturbs the heart's essential peace. So, I mean, I can't comment on all these lines, but the line that is really strikes me the most is the last line, and not to see the way's deep truth. And the way here is the middle way that we're talking about, not to see the middle way. Not to walk the middle way disturbs our essential peace. So, in other way, say differently, if we were to walk the middle way, our peace of heart will return. So, in other ways, we can say that the middle way is the path of serenity. The serenity that had nothing to do with chaos. It's a serenity that is way grounded on our own Buddha nature. So it doesn't matter how the circumstances on the outside world look like. We are grounded through the middle way in Buddha nature. When I started to practice Zazen, it was this poem, Trust in the Heart Mind, who taught me about how to hold my mind in Zazen. And now it teaches me how to walk the middle way in my daily life. Once, when the Buddha was asked whether or not the self exists, he remained silent. He said afterwards that if he had answered yes, he would have been promoting the concept of eternalism. If he had answered no, he would have been promoting nihilism. He said that in between, in his silence, lay the middle way, the middle path. During the second century of the Christian era, our Indian ancestor Nagarjuna founded the Madhyamaka, which in Sanskrit means middle way school, and wrote the fundamental verses of the middle way. I have a sample here for you. Neither does the self exist in what gives rise to seeing, hearing, and so forth, feeling, and the rest. Sight and hearing, and so forth, feeling, and the rest. If what possesses them does not exist, they too do not exist. I'm going to repeat it. Neither does the self exist in what gives rise to seeing, hearing, and so forth, feeling, and the rest. Sight and hearing, and so forth, feeling, and the rest. If what possesses them does not exist, they too do not exist. When you can really, get to feel this poem and get it to your heart, it's really liberating. It's very liberating. I want to go to Koan 15 of the Transmission of the Light, which tells the story of Nagarjuna's enlightenment. But before I go into that, I want to tell you briefly that our Indian ancestors lived in sacred lands where magic and miracles were part of their everyday lives. These kinds of events are, for the most part, absent later in China and Japan. Nagarjuna is particularly associated with the Prajnaparamita or Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. According to the legend, Nagarjuna retrieved the sutra from the bottom of the ocean. The Buddha had entrusted the sutra to the king of the water deities, the Nagas, until later on, when humanity would be able to understand it. The koan on Nagarjuna's transmission goes like this. When Kapimala, the 14th ancestor, answered the invitation of the Naga king, he received a wish-fulfilling jewel. Nagarjuna asked, "This is the ultimate jewel of the world. Does it have a form or is it formless? Kapimala said, you only know of having form or not. You don't know that this level neither has form nor is formless. And you do not yet know that this jewel is not a jewel. Hearing this, Nagarjuna was profoundly enlightened. Nagarjuna was clinging to the views of existence or non-existence. That is why Kapimala said, you only know of having form or not. Or in other words, you only know of having existence or non-existence. But you don't know that this level neither has form nor is formless. So when you said this level, so there is a more superficial level, and then this is a deeper level, more connected to our Buddha nature. So the jewel that they're talking about is a metaphor for our inherent nature of Buddha nature, the ultimate jewel of the way, the ultimate jewel of the way, the ultimate jewel of the middle path. And this jewel is not even a jewel. This jewel cannot even call a jewel. The concept of interdependence or dependent origination, which is the same thing, is central to Nagarjuna's conception of the middle way. Because everything is dependently originating, nothing is independent. Because everything is dependently originated, nothing is independent. Therefore, there is not an independent self. And also because everything is dependently originating, nothing is utterly non-existent. Looking at my own life, I see how it is dependently originated through my parents and ancestors, and now my life and my health continues to be dependently originated on the food I eat and the many laborers that make it available to me. So my life is also dependently originated thanks to the creatures of land, water, and air who support my life with their own life, and to the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space that support life on our planet. My deep gratitude goes to all of them, and to all of you, of course. To describe the interconnectedness of all phenomena, we can use the simile of Indra's net. The legend says that when the god Indra fashioned the world, he made it as a web, and at every knot in the web is tied a pearl. Everything that exists or has ever existed, every idea that can be thought about, every datum that is true, every Dharma is a pearl in Indra's net. Not only is every pearl tied to every other pearl, but on the surface of every pearl is reflected every other jewel on the net, every other pearl on the net. So many times I've seen how this dependent origination manifests in my life. Recently, we had been having lots of rain to the point of having floods because the abbey is in the lowest point of this property. In moments like that where I am about to despair, or even when I despair, or even after I despair, I surrender to the universe and open my heart asking for help to the universe. And it always happens that help comes through the least expected way or person. For me, this is the co-arising dependent manifestation of despair, of surrendering, of opening my heart and asking for help to the universe. It is a wondrous universe. And I understand Sasaki Roshi's words when he said that there is no reason to expect the reality of an immeasurable and unbounded life to satisfy our puny little thoughts. Wow, is that something? And I love it. Even if it seems a bit harsh at first. But when we consider the absolute unfathomability of walking a path beyond existence and non existence, this is something that is way beyond the reach of thoughts, and my words can only stumble to describe it in vain. When I started doing the practice of the middle way, I felt as if I was entering the bardo of letting go of those things to which I have attached solidity, letting go of my fixed world, my fixed people, and fixed things. I observe how all these forms turn into insubstantial figures and images, ghostly echoes of a distant and near past, vanishing in the sunlight of my awareness. I found a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh that expresses the Bardo experience of letting go of solidity, of traversing the ocean of mind beyond existent and non-existent, which is very beautiful, this poem. It goes like that, and you probably know it. The eyes are a deep ocean with whirlpools and violent winds, and shadows beneath the surface, and sea monsters deep within. My boat is sailing in mindfulness. I vow to hold the tiller firmly, so I do not drown in an ocean of form. Using my conscious breath, I am guarding my eyes for my protection and yours, so that today continues to be a beautiful day, and tomorrow we still have each other. This poem is so beautiful and helpful in so many ways. Um, so we practice the middle way in order not to drown in an ocean of form. And that's so true. And it intrigued me the part that he said, I'm guarding my eyes for my protection and yours. And I understand that through the eyes is which we mostly attach to things. And you know, just all the advertisement and that all the things that we see through the eyes, and then we immediately attach and we immediately want them, and then we lose the middle way and then we are attached, and then desires proliferate. So it's important to see and at the same time be aware that your eyes don't get attached to the objects of perception. And it's beautiful how he says, I'm guarding my eyes for my protections and yours. So because the middle way is the path of interdependence. We do it for our protection and yours. We do it for everyone. So that today continues to be a beautiful day, and tomorrow we still have each other. And this doesn't mean that we reject our senses, because like the trust in the heart mind says, if you would walk the highest way, and we are talking about the same way, we are talking about the middle way, Do not reject the sense domain, for as it is whole and complete, this sense world is enlightenment. So through the senses, we also connect with Buddha nature. The only problem is our attachment to perceptions. The Buddha also addresses the bardo of letting go of solidity. In the Diamond Sutra, he says it so supremely in his famous poem. So you should think in all this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. So, when we practice living our life from the middle way of existence and not existence, our eyes see, our ears hear, our nose smells, our skin touches, but our consciousness doesn't attach to the objects or of perception. This is the key. Even more, the practice of the middle way takes us to the experience of the Sambhogakaya realm. According to the teachings of Trikaya, a Buddha has three bodies. Since we are all intrinsically Buddhas, we are also endowed with these three bodies. The Dharmakaya, or the body of emptiness. The Nirmanakaya, which refers to the Buddha's physical manifestation or our own physical manifestation. And the Sambhogakaya, which sprang from the interaction of the Nirmanakaya and the Dharmakaya. The Sambhogakaya is the realm of empty forms of light. The Sambhogakaya is the view of a sacred world that can manifest from practicing the middle way. In Zen, we are very familiar with the Dharmakaya, or the body of emptiness. We encounter emptiness through Zen practice. To encounter emptiness is not yet enlightenment, and many sutras warn us not to be attached to this state. The chant of identity, the Sutra of Identity of the Relative and Absolute, written by Zen Master Sekito Kisen in the 8th century, says, to be attached to things is illusion. To encounter the Absolute is not yet enlightenment. Again, the middle path. Again, the middle way. It's being said in so many ways, but still the experience is unique and cannot even be put in words. Ukiyama Roshi says, unlike the flowers in the fields, human beings bear the burden of thought. Thought has a dual nature. Thought springs from life, and yet it has the ability to think of things totally ungrounded and detached from the fact of life. This is delusion. Being detached by our thoughts from reality, we fabricate seemingly substantial and accumulatable, sorry that word, such as money, position, or power, right in the middle of this unsubstantial world. We accumulate entities such as money, position, or power right in the middle of this unsubstantial world. And in order to possess these things, we become greedy and deceitful, hating and injuring each other. To fully understand how our mind latches to itself and constructs an imaginary self, we can look at the teachings of the nine consciousness. The Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism developed a classification of our different levels of consciousness. This school, together with the Madhyamaka school, founded by Nagarjuna that I mentioned before, are two of the most influential schools of Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. The founders of the Yogacara school are Vasubandhu, our 22nd ancestor, and his brother Asanga. The transmission of the light tells the story of Vasubandhu's enlightenment. And I found that these koans on the middle way of Nagarjuna's enlightenment and Vasubandhu's are precious dialogues on the middle way that can give you different perspective from looking at the different angles of this perspective on the middle way. And these dialogues are very, very precious. I hope these dialogues also help you understand better this supreme way. The 21st ancestor Jayata said to Vasubandhu, I do not seek the way, yet I'm not confused. I don't seek the way, yet I'm not confused. I do not pay obeisance to Buddha, yet I do not regard Buddha either. I do not sit for long periods, yet I am not lazy. I do not limit my meals, yet I do not eat indiscriminately either. I am not content, yet I am not greedy. When the mind does not seek anything, this is called the way. When the mind does not seek anything, this is called the way. This is called the middle way. When Vasubandhu heard this, he discovered uncontaminated knowledge, pure knowledge. And why is Jayata talking like that to Vasubandhu? And this is because Vasubandhu was a strict ascetic, and Jayata wanted to liberate him. Therefore, the previous encounter took place. Reading the words of Jayata, he liberates my mind too, as if I was an albatross bird, one of those birds that can fly over the ocean for long distances without having to stop or land. This is what the practice of the middle way can do for us. It can help us to be able not to have to land on a thought for a long time, for as long as we want. Talking about birds brings me to one of my first retreats. The teacher said, if you want to be free, you have to follow instructions. And he told a story. There was one time a little bird inside a cage. During sunny warm days, the owner used to put the cage outside so that the bird could get some fresh air. A wild bird used to come to visit the cage bird every time his cage was outside. The wild bird told the cage bird, if you want to be free, when your owner comes to feed you, you must act dead. Then, believing that you are dead, he's going to leave the cage open. And when he does, you can fly away. The little bird followed the instructions and became free. And this is what the middle path is. It's a path to freedom. It's the path of freedom. Absolute freedom from mental entanglements. Freedom from the fake self. Freedom from ego attachment. So coming back to the Yogacara school, The Yogacara school of consciousness only school postulated the existence of 8 levels of consciousness, and later on a ninth level of consciousness was added. Before I go in detail in each of the 9 consciousnesses, it is important to mention that all of these consciousnesses are emanations of the eighth, the storehouse consciousness, but they are basically one consciousness. We can use the simile of a lamp with 7 bulbs, the eighth consciousness being the underlying current that lights the 7 bulbs. We're going to briefly look at all these consciousnesses. The first 5 consciousnesses are the ones we are most familiar with. Eye consciousness, which perceives shapes. Ear consciousness perceives sounds. Nose consciousness perceives smells. Tongue consciousness perceives tastes. And body consciousness perceives tangibles. So the sixth consciousness, this is our intellectual consciousness. It makes sense of what we perceive through the 5 sense organs and works in conjunction with the 7 consciousness. And it's like a computerized processing center. Have you ever tried to remember an event or the name of something or someone, but you momentarily don't remember? And then, even after you give up trying to remember, you feel that your mind is still searching for that name. When this happens, this sixth consciousness is at work, searching through the old files until the file in question is found. Yay! The 7 consciousness or the defiling consciousness. This is where things happen. It is called the defiling consciousness because it is at this level that the false perception of a fixed and isolated self happens. It is at this level that the thinking mind latches to itself and creates the false belief of a separate self. There is no problem having thought. It's just that we make these thoughts being about an I that doesn't exist. That's the suffering of samsara. These seeds of delusion get stored in our storehouse consciousness, defiling the communication with the previous consciousnesses. So because this ego attachment defile the communications to the first 5 consciousness, what we see is not a pure perception. We are seeing already through the eyes of a false self. So there is no a pure perception of in this first 5 consciousness unless we kind of dissolve this false self at this 7 level of consciousness. And it is said that conditioning is stored at this level, the conditioning from all of our previous lives. And that is also at this level that this consciousness makes sense of our inner world. And I'm sure that you all have experienced how some event might trigger some reaction and it's like, oh, wow, where's this coming from? So now you know where it's coming from. And there is a lot more to say about that. I feel like Roshi and I wrote the book, The Great Hard Way, and it's all about this defiling consciousness and how we can transform it. So it's not a blockage on our way to experience Buddha nature. I felt so neurotic before I started to practice Zen. It was if I had in my head a CD that I couldn't stop day or night, in which my fake self was, of course, the central figure. It was really asphyxiating me. I was feeling asphyxiated. This situation started to change when I began Zen practice. The eighth consciousness, or the alaya consciousness, is located is located in the realm of the unconscious. It's called the storehouse consciousness because it stores all karma, whether positive or negative, ever created. The storehouse consciousness is called the never-perishing consciousness because the karmic seeds and the seeds of all habit energies and impressions from beginningless time are preserved here and continue even after death. When I was little and I was becoming mischievous, they used to tell me that God sees everything, so I couldn't hide. Everything I thought I could do in secret, whatever they told me, God can see that. And I always thought about that. But yeah, of course, they were referring to this consciousness, to the storehouse consciousness. All the actions and life experiences that occurred through the first seven consciousness are accumulated here as karma, which in turn exerts an influence on the workings of the previous seven consciousness. So it can become a closed circuit of karma, no way out, until we practice Zazen. We cannot gain access to this eighth karmic consciousness with our intellectual minds, which are too shallow to reach here. Willpower and effort alone will not enable us to change deep-seated karmic tendencies. However, the transformative power of our own heart, when we can feel our feelings directly, no words in the middle, feeling directly the bodily sensation of our feelings, and the power of awareness that we develop through the Zen, when we can let go of our thoughts, will allow us to transform our karma and to connect with our true nature, to Buddha nature. The ninth consciousness, or Amala consciousness. The ninth and deepest of the nine consciousnesses, free of defilement consciousness, or pure consciousness. The ninth consciousness being the fund. This is very important, and I hope my English is good enough to say it. The ninth consciousness being the fundamental workings of life itself throughout the universe. The ninth consciousness, Buddha nature consciousness, being the fundamental workings of life itself throughout the universe, It is the basis of all life's functions and is known as the Amala of fundamentally pure consciousness. And this Buddha nature consciousness is shared at the most profound level with all life, So, because all life share this most pure consciousness at the most profound level, that's why we are all interconnected and interdependent is very easily to understand once we know that Buddha nature, how we say it here, is the basis of all life functions and is shared with all life at the most profound level. The Amala consciousness is Buddha nature consciousness, and it's also called omniscience, omniscience. And this is the jewel that Kapimala was referring before, and this jewel is not even a jewel. A jewel cannot compare with Buddha nature. Our sixth Chinese ancestor, Huinen, said that when we are able to free ourselves entirely from attachment to sense objects, the objects of our perceptions, like we were saying before, at that time transformation takes place, and we will forever abide in the repeatedly arising Naga Dragon Samadhi. Naga Dragon Samadhi. Ukiyama Roshi says, the practice of Zazen is an unique development for dismantling this lump of ignorant ego attachment. In the Zazen posture, we are able to calm down and our mental excitability diminishes. It is by nature a posture in which it is impossible to think continuously about the same thing, and the fictions that we make up in our head dissolve. Therefore, when doing Zazen, we just sit, letting go of everything that comes up. All that has been learned is given back to learning. All that is memorized is given back to memory. All that is thought is given back to thought. I found this very important because many times we sit in Zazen, or we used to sit in Zazen, or maybe we still sit in Zazen and do it, and suddenly a thought comes, oh my God, this thought is so bright, I cannot let it go. No, we do let it go, and it will go back to thought. Our memories go back to memory. Our learning go back to learning. We don't lose anything. We don't lose anything by not following our thought. For the contrary, we can only gain. When we let go of our thoughts, they go back to the place where they came from. We don't lose anything. Our memory, our thoughts will be available when we need them. But they won't be taking us captive by making a false selves. When we practice the middle way of interdependence and co-arising manifestation, everyone and everything benefits from it. And Indra's net shines all over the universe. I encourage you to practice the middle way for the benefit of our planet, creatures, and human beings. Mahaprajna Paramita.